Everybody, JC here with another TNI toy review, and today we're going to take a look at the new DC Collectibles Justice League War figures, which are based on one of the more recent DC animated feature films from Warner Home Video. These figures, there's 5 in the series, all have been released today at comic and specialty shops. And all 5 figures come in this very standardized generic type packaging, window blister packaging. You've got, basically it's a white card back with some images from the animated movie of some of the characters with the Justice League War logo on the back, and then the figures clearly displayed so you can see what you're getting. Then on the back, it's the same, and it's the same, the back is exactly the same for all 5 figures. You basically just get a look at all 5 figures, and it tells you that the figures have glow-in-the-dark features. And then down at the very bottom, it tells us that the Flash, Superman, Green Lantern, and Shazam were sculpted by Phil Ramirez, and Wonder Woman was sculpted by Jack Matthews. And we're going to look at all 5 figures today in this review. They're all very similar build as far as articulation and all that, so I'm just going to kind of look at all 5 of them in this one review. Okay, so let's get the figures open and take a look at what's inside. Okay, so here's a look at the figures outside of the packaging. This assortment includes figures of Green Lantern, Superman, Wonder Woman, the Flash, and Shazam. And as I mentioned before, these figures are based on the DC animated feature film Justice League War, which, if you're not familiar with that one, it's basically a retelling of the New 52 story arc, the initial story arc in the Justice League comic for the New 52, where they end up facing off against coming together as a team and facing off against Darkseid. So essentially what you have here is some kind of animated versions of the New 52 figures. The costumes are based essentially on the New 52 designs, though they do vary a little bit from what you see in the comic books, and the figures themselves have a little bit more of an animated look to them than like you see with their comic book counterparts. Okay, so out of the 5 figures, the only one that comes with any accessory is Wonder Woman, and she comes with her sword, which is basically the same kind of sword that her New 52 comic book counterpart figure came with, very similar to that sword. And she can only hold it in her right hand. Her left hand is closed-fisted, so you can only get it in the one hand. But she does hold the sword pretty tightly in that hand. She also has her lasso attached on her side, but it's not removable. And again, none of the other figures come with any actual accessories. The detailing and paint apps on these figures are not nearly as nice as what you typically see with a DC collectible figure. Now, one of the reasons that seems to be is they've included this glow-in-the-dark gimmick with these figures. I don't know why, since these are really not meant for kids or anything. These are collector figures, but you know, you'll see on all the figures they have these kind of line work on them, and it's basically done with a fluorescent type paint that's supposed to glow in the dark, essentially. Now, to be honest, they don't really glow that brightly, so it's not like the gimmick even works that well. And with some of the figures, like, I just think that the paint, like around the joints and stuff, like, I don't know how well you can see with like Shazam, but the paint just looks a little bit sloppy to me in certain places on some of the figures. The faces, again, are done with, you know, kind of supposed to be in an animated kind of look, but I really am not terribly impressed with any of them. I think Superman looks like a kid, just kind of silly in my opinion. Shazam, a little bit the same way. Green Lantern looks okay. The face looks okay with Green Lantern. Wonder Woman's face and Wonder Woman's costume is the most varied from like the comic book counterpart. This is what she looks like in the cartoon. so it is cartoon accurate, but it is very different from the comic book counterpart costume. She's also got this ponytail, her hair's in a ponytail. I would recommend you be very careful when you move this around. It's got some flexibility, but it really feels like if you moved it too much that it would easily break off. So just be careful with that. So anyway, all of the figures, as I said, have this supposed to have this glow in the dark function, or some paint striping on them so that they glow in the dark. So I'll turn the light off just so you can kind of see. And again, it does not really work very well. Like you can see, like Green Lantern's symbol on his chest, and some of the lines kind of light up a little bit. Same with Superman. But for the most part, these don't really stick out that much in the dark to me. Height-wise, the figures are all roughly about the same height. They stand just around 6 3/4 inches tall, so just a little bit under 7 inches tall. And again, for the most part, they're all about the same height. And they fit in with like regular figures halfway decent. Like here's, I don't know why, but Batman was not included in this lineup, so there is not, at least, I forget if there's one coming down the road, but right now, in this initial wave, they did not do Batman for Justice League War, even though he is in the cartoon, or in the movie. But here he is, here are the figures next to the Greg Capullo New 52 version of Batman that they did recently, and so they're about the same height and everything. And this figure actually kind of fits in if you wanted to have Batman with your Justice League War group as a stand-in. As far as articulation goes, they all have basically the same points of articulation, and they are a little bit better than their New 52 comic book counterparts, not including the Greg Capullo Batman. That one has much better articulation. But like the original New 52 figures that DC Collectibles released, these do have a little bit better articulation, but it's still not great. And again, it's not nearly as good as like the Greg Capullo Batman figure that they recently released. But we'll just go over it with the Superman. Like I said, it's the same for all the figures, but we'll go over it with the Superman figure here. The head's on a ball joint, so he has a little bit of up and down movement, and he can look left and right, can tilt his head a little bit. But basically the head is just on a ball joint. There's no hinge or anything. The shoulders or the arms are attached at the shoulder with your standard ball hinge joint, so he's got good rotation, what you would expect. He does have a bicep swivel. He has a single hinged elbow, so he can bend his elbow about that much. Now, initially I thought that Superman had swivel wrists. It looks like you can see the break there, but this one won't move at all. And I did get this one to move a little bit, but it actually feels like if I kept moving it, it would just break. So I don't think they're intended to be removable, and I know the other figures don't have swivel wrists. So even though the Superman figure, the wrist looks like it's supposed to be swivel, I don't think they're meant to be. There's no ab crunch or midsection joint on these figures, disappointingly. Where these figures are better than their comic book counterpart figures is that they do have ball joints at the legs, so you can get them to do splits pretty good. You can get their legs out and back pretty good. So that is an improvement over their comic book counterparts. No thigh swivel at all, single hinge knee so they can bend their knee about that much, and then no ankle articulation at all, which is very disappointing. I think I would be happy if they had just given these some kind of ankle articulation, but unfortunately they didn't. And then they have one peg hole on the bottom of their feet. That's my review. Overall, I gotta say that I'm not terribly impressed with these figures. I think I'm not really liking the cartoony looks for these figures. I know they're based on an animated feature, but the figures look more cartoony than the actual animated movie did, to be honest. And then the paint apps are not, and the detail on the costumes and everything are not as solid as we've seen with their New 52 comic book version counterparts. The articulation is a little bit better, but I would have liked to have seen an ab crunch or ankle joints. That would have made these figures a lot better if they had added that. So it's a little disappointing that they don't have more articulation and that they don't have the high detail with the paint apps and everything. And the whole glow in the dark thing just seems to be a waste to me. I'm really not sure what the point of that was. But if you really like the Justice League War movie, and you were a fan of the costume designs, then you may want to pick these up. And as I mentioned, they are hitting comic book and specialty shops now, so you can go out and pick them up if you want to. So that's my review. I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, I'll check you later.